Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber, to better understand their buyers, what motivates them, and what they hate that vendors do. It's time to unmute your mic. Are you ready? All right, welcome to another episode of Audience First. I have a very special guest in the house. I have the one and only Ira Winkler. But before we get into the introductions, Ira, I have to tell the backstory of how we officially met, quote unquote. This is a unique anecdote from my early times as a cybersecurity marketer. I was working at a startup in Israel and was the demand gen marketer there. And all of a sudden, one morning, I get a heated email from one Ira Winkler. And I remember in the email, Ira, you had said something along the lines of, I will never do business with your company. You guys really, messed up on this one. You should never call me on my personal mobile phone for follow-up. And I was like, whoa, what happened there? Why? What's going on? Um, I remember we had to kind of remediate the situation. And I was like, okay, we got to fix this. And now you're on the show. Like you're kind of why I created Audience First, to be honest. So you're at fault.
I am honored and I still stand by it. You don't, just the backstory. They just kept, sending me like an email. If I remember correctly, it was emails. It was to not just my regular address, my academic address. And then they started sending me LinkedIn messages. And then they said, oh, we haven't been able. And then I got a call on my cell phone. And it was like, well, I wasn't able to get a chance to get to you through your LinkedIn, so I thought I'd just give you a call.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I literally told the guy, and the problem is he was doing what he was doing, and the question was the company supportive of it? And they need to know what their people are doing. That's why I email, because it's easy for me to just complain. Letting people know if this is your practice might not be the practice. That was the hope. Sounds like it might have been. So that's a separate issue.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you were brutally honest with us. I certainly listened. I know our CEO and CMO listened. So I don't know if that's rare. Maybe some listen, some don't. But I wish more listened. Let's be real. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here kvetching to
Mhm.
everybody every week. But, Ira, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How about you tell everybody, who are you, what do you do, and why the hell do you do it?
Well, my name's Ira Winkler. I'm currently CISO of Security, which is a company in the cyber risk optimization space, kind of cyber risk quantification, but a lot more. I also am, I don't know what else to put in. I'm putting together CruiseCon, which is exactly what it sounds like, a conference on a cruise ship where I got Admiral Rogers to be the keynote. So we will be the flagship of cybersecurity. But most important, it's available to everybody, not just invite only executives and stuff, which I think is important. And then also wrote 8 books, including You Can Stop Stupid, Security Awareness for Dummies, and a few others. And, throughout my career as chief security architect at Walmart, chief security strategist at HP, started a couple of companies that I sold. And then maybe someday I'll finish my PhD, hopefully 2025, although I said that about 2024. So we shall see.
And I thought I did a lot. I mean, that's it. That's quite a lot. And
Mm,
Seems like you're on a roll there, but you mentioned, something very compelling to me, CruiseCon,
mhm,
open to everybody. Now, when when I entered this space, everybody wanted to get in touch with the CISO. CISO,
right.
CISO, CISO. But in talking to practitioners and CISOs, I'm like, "Okay, well, they're telling me, you don't need to just talk to me. You gotta be talking to my lieutenants. You need to be talking to the practitioners, the architects, the engineers, the directors who work for me," right? And I feel like we're kind of in a moment where vendors are starting to understand that we should be talking to the practitioners as opposed to just targeting the CISOs. You mentioned now again, like I said, it's open to everybody. Why are you opening that to a broader audience?
Well, frankly, I got to admit, it's frustrating at different points in my time. Like I said, I've been senior executive in massive programs, and I could literally, and like, I was talking to some people, maybe we'll go into this, but there's a tiered system when you go to conferences. It is a completely different experience when you go to a conference as the CISO of a Fortune 200 company, or especially, even chief security architect of a Fortune 1 company, where you're invited to the president's dinner, where like literally the president is there, not of the company, but of the, former president of the United States and things like that, where you get like lavish dinners and stuff like that, and, every so often, like, I'll maybe there's a concept of VVIP or
Mhm.
P or previous or PIP, previously important person. I stole that name from David Stender, Dave, who used to be CISO of the IRS. Then all of a sudden he left the role after being CISO of a Fortune 20 bank, and then what happened was he couldn't get an invite anywhere.
Mm.
I'm, like, sitting there thinking, but, like, it's important to, like, experience the best. Like, I was invited, for example, to the Team 8 retreats. Team 8 takes people out in the desert of Israel, or recently out in the, forest of California, where you get together with other CISOs. They have, like, not just technical talks, but they have talks about wellness, about other things in really great locations. And I'm sitting here like, why? No offense to my friends who are at this level, but why should this type of content, why should this type of networking, why should this type of experience be reserved for just a few elite, when the networking is even more important when you're at the lower level? Again, if I'm
Mhm.
chief security architect of Walmart, I could pick up the phone and get anybody in cybersecurity on the phone within a few minutes. But if I wanted to go ahead as a normal person, if I want to go ahead and figure out how do I get my next job as a, like, mid-level person, or how do I potentially meet a good qualified mentor to provide vision if I'm at a lower level, you're not exposed to that sort of stuff. You're stuck in, and I by no means am trying to denigrate this because it's an important experience, but like the FOMO party at RSA, where like 1,000 people show up, and like even then it's like you're on the wait list and stuff like that. And, maybe you meet a few good people, and I still go to those events and I meet people who have no idea who I am. And it's important to meet people at every level and talk and see what people are experiencing. And yes, if somebody gets a chance to speak to Admiral Rogers, who never would be even allowed in the same room. Admiral Rogers, though, is a great guy. The problem is people don't pay to have him speak to their employee population to just mingle. They have them
Mhm.
at different events for executives.
Mhm.
And so, I'm trying to bring this experience to everybody because, again, I think we started talking because of what's the experiences like at Black Hat and everything like that. And it's way too much of a tiered system
Mhm.
for people to get maximum benefits out of it. So I want
Yeah.
to break that in a good way.
What are kind of the implications of expanding to different audiences and levels? Like, how is that going to impact our space?
Well, I think, for example, people who are earlier in their career, and I realized that, there is a price point. It's my goal. I put CruiseCon together as an example, where I'm hoping the companies would pay for anybody who wants to attend. But I'm not a fool, and I know some people are gonna pay their own way,
Mhm.
and so it's gonna be a little bit possibly exclusionary just because if companies are gonna pay or not. But the concept is, it's like, you're gonna get people who will be able to accelerate their careers, in my opinion, by
Mhm.
networking, by meeting new people, by meeting executives. I specifically create a session, with former, with actual Fortune 100 CISOs, where you can ask them anything.
Mhm.
They're willing to do this, and that's awesome. And, that's, how what people make of it is frankly their is gonna be their own choice. I mean, you can go to RSA, for example, or Black Hat most recently, and you could either attend the sessions, you could figure out, "Okay, I'm gonna take a sampling of this," or you could be like some people who look at, "Hey, we're at our conference, Black Hat's for drinking and smoking," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"You do you, boo," you know?
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking here at the, sessions. That looks great. Great speakers too. I
Yeah.
want in.
Well, you're invited to pay. We might have you we're actually, there is CruiseCon Light in October 25 potentially,
Woo.
and then, a second edition that's already penciled in the following February, but
No, that's
might
amazing.
have you because there the then, I mean, because the relationship between marketers and CISOs is really critical. Because
Why?
why? Because in my opinion, here's the thing. A lot of so you mentioned also like talking to the deputies. Let's say, for example, like when people would approach, like, I wrote a post on LinkedIn where when I was, at Walmart, I literally had people stalking me. Like there was somebody who came, like you could tell they were running to catch up to me because they were out of breath, saying, "Oh, what a coincidence to meet, catch up with you." And I'm like, "Who the fuck are you?" You told me I could curse.
Yes,
And but
100%.
I'm, like, sitting here, like, I'm here with my wife, I'm with a friend, and you're, like, stalking me? And
Mm,
you're not gonna get it, and frankly, I'm the wrong person. The
mm,
people who have the needs, and again, to marketers and salespeople, if I'm ever gonna give any guidance, is you need to be like you, a thought leader in your field. You need to generate thought leadership that, for example, any large organization, if I, for example, have a privileged access, management problem as chief security architect or CISO, yeah, we know that's the thing. And great. I have a team of 30 people who do just that. And if there's something that they need, they're going to bubble it up and say, "Hey, we need this." And I'm like, and they'll be like, "Okay, fine, find a solution." And those are the people that are gonna go out, they're gonna Google, they're gonna see who, maybe a few of them go to conferences. There's not a lot of people at lower levels who unfortunately go to conferences, and so they're gonna go out, they're gonna, maybe ask their friends, but you need to generate thought leadership. And then these people who we trust intimately to do
mhm,
their jobs well are going to say what they need.
mhm.
And frankly, if you are like one of those people who sucks up and shits down, you're shitting on the people who are going to bring your product to us for approval.
Yeah,
Wh-
so
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no, you're all good. I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought, so if there's anything you wanted
Oh
to add,
no, nah, it would
you got it.
just be some more curses probably.
Oh, okay, so save those. We have so you talk about thought leadership, and I hate throwing that term around, but really it's like, before we hit the big red button, I said, like, can you actually like form an opinion? There's thought, but there's also opinion and staying behind that, right? Like I think why if I may toot on my horn a little bit, which I don't do very frequently, and I probably should. I think the reason why what I've been doing has been resonating so much with folks, not just on the marketing and sales side, but also the practitioner side, is because I've formulated an opinion and I've stuck to it. That's hard to do, especially when you're like, as a marketer, faced with so many aggressive growth goals, and sometimes you can't even like think about what it is you want. you want to think about because you're people are breathing down your neck. I've been there. Like you have investors breathing down your neck, you have your CMOs, there's the CRO breathing down your neck, the CEO wants to see predictability and tangible results. Like what though do you think marketers and sellers can do to form an opinion and like what kinds of opinions and thoughts and thought leadership, quote unquote, if you will, would you like to see as a practitioner, trying to solve a problem that needs an outcome, but is also quite active on LinkedIn?
So, in the first place, when I say thought leadership, and we're talking products like privilege access management,
Mhm,
I'm just making that up. But, that's an example where I need to see, like, if somebody is going to be there, it's like, okay, privilege access management, Google that, vendors privilege access management. Who is generating articles that will help me do my job? Maybe it's some how to, maybe it's some where is the market going, maybe it's something how is my product better than the rest and doing product comparisons and things like that. I don't know if you'd call that thought leadership, maybe as opposed to more targeted technical materials per se. But a lot of companies, they put all their money into cold calling people and maybe that works for them. I don't know. It's probably dependent upon who's doing the work more than it's dependent upon the means I found. But, companies need to become a magnet, and a magnet means that you are going ahead and attracting people with the information that a potential buyer or practitioner related to your tool, practitioner in the field that you're in, who would use your tool are going to come to. And
mhm,
organizations like, so for example, I've done some work with, independently with, security awareness and like, for example, they've had me generate white papers on why, for example, is this approach better than another approach? And that way, if I'm in the mood for looking for example, a phishing, simulation tool, I could look at that and read this document and say, does this document make sense? Now, how many companies are actually putting their money into generating useful content for practitioners and not recognize or not stopping to recognize that the person they're after might not be looking now, but will be looking in the future.
mhm,
And so if I'm sitting here, to your marketing fans or something like that, I'm probably thinking, okay, what's going to be more useful in the future for potential sales? Because you've got to do like, people are like, what's the funnel? Where are my leads coming from and everything like that? And okay, you've got to realize that a lot of your leads are not your leads now. They are your leads months or year or more from now. And you've got to start this. And yes, you need to put out some, not by calling me on the phone, but you've got to go ahead and start to go ahead and generate this funnel of thought leadership because because you're going to attract the people at the lower levels. You're going to attract the people who are doing the work and they're going to go ahead and find it and bubble it up.
mhm.
Maybe if you're dealing with a smaller organization, because, I realize I kind of like one of my friends told me the cyber poverty lines, like the Fortune 300 and below. And
I
so,
haven't heard that before, cyber poverty line, so I gotta
yeah, one of my friends, Todd Inskeep, if you've not,
yep,
he's actually done research on what level of people actually have the budget sufficient to do their job well. And
interesting.
by going ahead and extrapolating, for example, well, generally 10% of the company budget is going to IT and 10% of that's going to cybersecurity. You look at roughly at 1% of the corporate revenue going down to cybersecurity, and
Mhm,
then which organizations actually have that 1% matter. And when you get, according to him, it was like, about a Fortune 300 below that, it's hard to come up with a good cybersecurity program that's fully funded, staff equipped, and so on at that budget level for that revenue, for that level. Because at some point when you're big enough, it kind of levels out because you operationalize things,
mhm,
but at as you go lower, you still need there's a budget you need to kind of sort of kind of do things right, and it's not practical. That's frankly why, for example, managed security service providers are a good market because they can at least share the burden or the cost burden across multiple customers, as an example.
Is that information publicly available for us to kinda drill down into at some point?
No, I think he said he did personal research.
Oh, right.
It was a dinner conversation I had with him a while ago.
Oh, I would've paid a lot of money to be a fly on that wall.
It was actually a really good CISO event, come to think of it, because it was like, it was one of these. I don't wanna say this was one of those tiered exclusionary things, because we could bring our friends and family as an example, but,
Right.
it was a bunch of, like, seasoned CISOs from, with significant background, and Todd's one of those people that
Mm,
was attending.
mm.
But
Todd's actually a member of the Cyberness, which I'm working with now doing marketing over there, so,
oh, okay.
maybe I can ping him, and ask, if he has any insight offline to share, because that's compelling for me to understand
Mhm.
as a marketer, and if we wanna target specific segments, like, where's our best bet from a specific, from a vendor size too, right? If we're gonna be targeting enterprise or not, where's the
Yeah.
cutoff, right?
Well, one
Um,
thing, and this isn't, I don't know, this wasn't the intended conversation, but one thing to also realize is, back when I was at Walmart, me and the deputy CISO were having a laugh over all the, like, our LinkedIn inboxes. That's like the worst thing you could ever, Fortune 200 plus, you don't waste your time sending LinkedIn messages. But we were laughing over that. And it's like one day we were like joking. It's like, yeah, the worst thing we could ever do is say yes to like some of these people. Because, just think like if you're in a global company with millions of computers and you get a startup and the startup thinks they're going to chase the whale, my biggest thing is if you're a startup, even series A, maybe B, do not go after like a Fortune 100 company. It's just not in your best interest because, first off, the legal paperwork's going to take your entire management team like 9 months to get through. Then you're like, oh, but just be a proof of concept. I'm like, the legal paperwork's going to take you 9 months just to get through. And then that you have to expect me to take somebody off. And then you're going to have to be able to come on board and pretty much deal with every type of technology that's ever been invented still being in place across a large organization. Small organizations do not have the scale to support something like that.
okay.
May Yeah. Anyway,
So no. This is why I never send questions ahead of time, because we generally never get to them. Because this I wanna tug on this thread. It's a very important conversation which we never tapped into on Audience First. So, let's say you are a small startup. Um, by the way, side note, we can always go back to the questions,
yeah.
FYI. But let's say you are a small startup, um, and, you have this ideal thought that, "Yes, we're gonna go over at enterprise, clients and blah, blah, blah." But to your point, it's just way too much to handle. How does that small startup get from early stage to scale up and eventually like IPO or start acquiring people? Like how do they get that hockey stick growth that's expected of investors?
Well, frankly, you have to deal with smart investors and stuff like that. Like some of the better investors, let's look at, for example, you take a company like Evolution Equity, really good track record, really good companies in their portfolio and everything like that. They have their CISO community. They can show this and, they can show potential products who could potentially bring them in. you know, I'm hoping that they look, their CISO, what do you call it? The CISO group that they have includes some mid-size organizations that can take a look and can be the bridge to go ahead to work out the kinks. Because no matter how good your program is, you're going to have bugs in there. You're going to have compatibility issues. You're going to have a variety of acceptance issues. You're going to have operational issues and so on. So if you can get a good investor, which frankly most organizations can't, that's one thing. But then you frankly have to hit the pavement, as they say, and just start working and focusing on people who are going to be more receptive. Focus on like the people who, for example, might be in a mid-sized company and say, "Hey, I need something new at this." And it's like, I remember an old Dilbert cartoon where the pointy hair manager, walks in and says, "Hey, we've outsourced your job to Northern Albonia." And then Dilbert replies, "But I'm working on a defense contract and, with top secret information, and Northern Albonia is hostile to our country." And the pointy hair manager goes, "Well, all that's true, but we have to balance that off with the fact they're willing to do the work for free."
Mhm.
Now, if you can get this by offering some compelling pricing and everything like that, that's critical. I can't tell you how to be an entrepreneur because, when I started a company, I was a little bit blessed by having a reputation, a background, and connections to Fortune 50 CISOs. That when I started my company, my companies were like GE when it was a real company.
Mhm.
Um, when it was the Global One as an example. Um, when people recognized me, when I could put something out on LinkedIn and people would just say, "Hey, I need that." Other people, you're gonna have to find what works for you. I need the I need to see everybody's different. But again, if you could start with some mid-sized companies, because again, everybody has this vision of like chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but you're probably stepping over a lot more gold to get to that thing that's never going to come together.
Yeah. That's great advice, by the way. I think that's applicable not just to security startups, but really any entrepreneur who is trying to grow a business.
I appreciate
Um, all right, I wanna shift back to kind of the core of what we wanted to talk about, which is some of the black hat stuff. I mean, you were there.
I actually was not there
Oh,
this
you were
year.
not? Oh my goodness. I thought I saw something,
I
you
get
had.
around, but I mean, I spoke about it in general, but I
Yeah.
mean, it was like I literally had no like, so I actually had a presentation that I was told but was rejected in the final round. Like, almost made it. I'm doing academic research for my dissertation, and I found with 100% accuracy an AI algorithm that can predict susceptibility to phishing vulnerability.
Okay.
So, anyway, that didn't make it. Apparently have other good presentations. I know the people on the program committee, and if they said it was not among the chosen, I respect them.
Mhm.
I am, however, giving the sessions at InfoSec World in September, and I think at ISC Squared Security Congress, so people can still see it. Um, anyway, that aside, I wasn't there, but it's just this I nobody told me it's anything different than what I've experienced before, so let's go with that
Let
for
okay, so what did you experience before? Kinda take me through
so,
through
again, like I
previous.
mentioned, it's a very tiered system, and, like,
Yeah.
like, I replied to your post, and the reason I replied to it was you were mentioning how, like, RSA, like, executives perceived RSA as more valuable while Black Hat was marketing. And, frankly, that's true. I mean, the thing is, like I mentioned, it's a very tiered system. Like, even when RSA, like, I usually speak there every year, and I go to my session, and, every so often, like, I know people who are there and they want to go and make the most and attend the other sessions. I frankly get pulled into meetings and stuff like that and get asked to speak at side events. And you need to understand that it's a very different experience where there are the VC events, there are invite only events that I get to go to, and those are awesome. And it's not that I don't value the RSA sessions, I value, frankly, the connections I make, and my friends are kind of like going to the other events anyway. And this year at Black Hat, what struck me was because even when I'm not there, I'm looking at what's coming out of this.
Mm.
And when I look at what's coming out of this, it's like, hi, they take their stupid pictures and say, I'm on my way to hacker summer camp, which an expression I despise. And I think that was my response to you.
Yep, yep, we
You
gotta
know,
stop calling it camp.
yeah, I mean, like, why aren't, you know, where are the junior people who can get the most out of this? And it's like,
Mm.
well, maybe you should stop calling it hacker summer camp so people won't think it's a boondoggle. But even beyond those pictures, all I see are pictures of parties, people drinking at bars, people catching up with their friend at bars. Then I see the biggest controversy. Okay, so we had pictures. So now my employees are going to be sexually demeaned because there's women with lampshades on their heads. I did not see any single post that said, here's a critical session that I derive value from. I didn't see that at the keynotes, at least for example, at RSA, you can point to good keynotes, you know?
So,
Yes.
it's interesting you say that because I fortunately got access to a briefings pass. Shout out to Veronis, Rebecca over at Veronis who gave me that pass. And I was
Mhm.
like, this is like the prime opportunity to go into the sessions and extract insights. Like, but I went through the sessions. I didn't find anything from the titles, at least, and that I didn't find anything compelling to go to because it was all like a lot of vendor pitches. You
Yeah,
know,
and
I wanna hear about the experiences, there's research, but, like, I almost feel like, and this is also verbatim straight from another CISO's mouth, is like, they showed me the keynote, and it was literally he said, "It looked like an Ariana Grande concert." Like, at this point, like,
yeah, I
where
mean,
have we lost the mission of
so
research-oriented value to the conference goers to
so let me go like, actually somebody also I've replied to them on the same string. Like, when did Black Hat become so commercial? So I was actually, as background, the first keynote at the first Black Hat in, I think it was 1997, maybe, you know, and at the time, the way Black Hat came about was DEF CON started becoming a little bit more commercial, not in the organization per se, but in who was attending. Like, you had more business executives, you had more companies showing up to try to find people, and somebody said to Jeff Moss, "Hey, you're getting all these corporate people. Why don't you do a more corporate event?" And this was frankly even before RSA was a major thing back in 1997. And what happened was, so Jeff organized Black Hat with the specific thing of getting sponsors, and my company at the time, I got them to sponsor the event. They then backed out because they thought they would get repercussions for supporting hackers at a conference called Black Hat, and so they took they asked to have their name off. It was a bizarre thing, but the goal was, it was like the time ICSA and another company. I left ICSA in no large part because of my arguments with them over that. But other people were like, there was a one other sponsor, but then as that became successful, it moved from the first one was at the Aladdin, if I remember correctly. And the only reason it was at the Aladdin was because the Aladdin was being torn down,
Mhm,
and and then they moved it after, and they didn't care if DEF CON trashed it anymore. So, it was there, then it finally moved over to Caesars for a while, and Caesars, they started getting more and more vendors. It wasn't
mhm,
as huge as it is today. It was like a room with a couple tables, but so when it became that commercial, it was somewhere around, probably the mid, 2000s into the 2010s.
mm.
Anyway, I don't know if that helped, but that's
No,
kind
it
of
does, but why I mean, obviously, it's opportunistically, they wanna make money, but at what point do you really think we lost the core mission of this, and, like, what's the alternative for bringing it back up?
well, the core mission was always a more commercial version of Black Hat.
Mhm,
That was the mission when it was founded. Make money for Jeff at the time. And, I think it was beneath, yeah. So anyway, make money for Jeff, and that's what it was. And then what happened was where we lost it, I mean, for a while, and I think there's a lot coming together because you started getting sessions at Black Hat that were like, okay, the DEF CON sessions, but then those speakers stay for Black Hat and give the same ones.
mm,
That was where most of the content came from. And at the time, DEF CON sessions were much more technical, a little bit on the edge and stuff like that. So that was fine. But they were intended to be technical. And then they intended to be 0 day.
mm,
And now you look at 0 day and technical talks, and frankly, a lot became, okay, who was friends of Jeff for a while? The program committee was there. And like, you had, for example, people giving like entry level talks on database security and things like that. And it was some good content, because Jeff could pick and choose. But then what happened was they opened it up and it became mission driven and stuff to a certain extent where, you know, let's, let's just make it more grander, more inclusive. So it's not just the same tech people talking tech talks like that. Like, for example, one of the first other talks at Black Hat I remember was Mudge talking about how he came up with I forgot the name of the password cracker where to crack the Windows NT password, where he described how the password was arranged. And we got away from talks like that. And then I think there's also other factors coming in that we need to understand. Like, for example, if we were doing like there was a big focus on 0 days. Now there's no benefit to saving a 0 day for Black Hat. You can make money by doing a bug bounty. You can make money by selling it to the vendor or whatever. You can still get the same credit. So there's not this motivation to still do 0 days only at Black Hat. There's more motivation not to.
Mhm.
But and then it's a matter of, okay, where's the program committee putting their focus? I don't wanna sound like rotten apples, again, I know the people who rejected my session, and I trust them implicitly. I don't know about the rest of the sessions. If people aren't getting value, they need to go ahead and sit down and say, "Why am I not getting value from here?
Mm.
Where's our focus going that people are disparaging us?" Even I'll leave it at that for now.
No, I think that's a very, very, um, great piece of tangible advice to take away is, like, let's self-assess what went down and actually listen to the market, right? Listen to the conference goers, even the vendors,
Yeah, and maybe even, like, if you're not seeing enough quality in a given track, maybe you take a few sessions away and give it to
yeah.
another track that has better sessions. I know they do that at RSA to
Mhm.
look at, like, there's somebody I know the people at RSA well, so I don't know what hopefully I'm not giving out any secret sauce, but there
Yeah.
is a review that at the end of the day says, "Hey, are the quality of the sessions we're seeing of such a nature, and should I do a rebalance? Like, is there something from one track that should possibly, be accepted that couldn't make it into that track as an example?"
Yeah. 100%. Well, we're headed to the end of the session, but we still have room for my favorite part of the
Yeah.
show, which is the shit list. And I want to know what is the worst experience you've had with a vendor?
Besides of calling me up, besides of stalking me, besides of, like, again, there was like, so here's one that I wish I could remember their names so I could disparage them on purpose. But while I was with Walmart, there was a guy, and this struck with me. It's not really that bad, but it just stuck with me. There was this guy who was constantly sending me messages on LinkedIn. "Oh, I see you're speaking at InfoSec World. I'm gonna, whatever." And I just ignored it and just kept. And then I'm like setting up for my session. It's like, "Oh yeah, we've been connecting this whole time. How?" I'm like, "Fuck are you?" And I'm like, "Is this the guy who's been annoying me?" And then he's like, and then so I had this thing where if I at some points in time, my agreement was if I was doing certain things that, Walmart couldn't financially support and I still wanted to speak, I could not, Walmart, I couldn't use their slides or titles or anything. So I would sometimes, with blessing and agreement, do things. And so I didn't have and he's like, "You're not with Walmart, are you?" I'm like, when he saw the slides. And then I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And then anyway, so then we're like talking, and the guy did not want, and the guy was like, "Oh, you're not with them." And he like was just had this disdain for me. And I'm like sitting there. I remember my initial conversation about or a part of it where I mentioned David Stender and PIP, previously important person.
Mhm.
Whoever that person is, and people who treat me like a PIP because I've moved on or in other people. I hope people remember these things. I don't want to say I make a list like some people, but it's just like there should be karma for people like that.
Mhm.
Where even though I was still at the organization, they were trying to, they were trying to just, like somehow "Well, if you're not with them, I don't want anything to do with you." I'm like, "Really?" You know?
That's unfortunate.
Sorry, it's more the attitude, the PIP attitude per David Stender
Yeah.
that I mentioned. You have to treat the one of the things I've always done is treat everybody with respect.
Mhm.
Even though, like, if somebody's out of work, I don't care if they left a Fortune 200, they're gonna be a director somewhere else. They're still important, and I wish, sometimes I don't treat everybody with the care I wish I could, because 'cause I'm either busy, I'm occupied, my mind goes to a lot of places, but people need to make an intent to treat everybody like they're the most important people in the world. Like, one thing, and sorry, completely off topic,
No,
but
no.
I've met Richard Simmons twice.
Oh,
I
wow.
actually flew on an airplane with Richard Simmons on the other side of the aisle from me. I was in first class, obviously, but this one, but everybody knows Richard Simmons. And people were walking, and, like, this one woman, first woman to walk up, she had a napkin and a pen, and she's like, "Excuse me, Mr. Simmons, can you please sign this?" And he grabbed it out of her hand, slammed it down. It's like, "No." He's like, "You're too important for a napkin."
Oh,
Opened
man.
up his briefcase, and he had a whole stack of 8 by 10,
Oh, man. That's
and he
awesome.
started, "You're too important for a napkin." And he, she at first she was shocked, but then he's like, "You deserve the best." And he, like, got it out. He's like, "What's your name?" And then that was the first person. Then every person who walked up, he had something to say, that some way to compliment them. "That's a lovely name. This is something." He made everybody feel like the most important person in the world when he was dealing with them.
Mhm.
And then and then even when we got off the plane, and then the surprising part, this was a side note, but I didn't even realize this myself. In the seat behind me was Pat Sajak, who was as well known as anybody else, the few years ago, and nobody knew he was there. It was bizarre. But then what happened when we were getting off the plane, we got into BWI Airport where we live, and we're getting off the plane, and I got off ahead, of Richard Simmons because he was, like, organizing or something. But anyway, all of a sudden I hear, like, this woman, like this old woman who's like, "Oh my God, it's Richard Simmons," because apparently he was behind me. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden I heard, "Oh my God, it's you." And he comes running past me to grab the woman and give her a hug. And I'm like, I wish I could treat everybody like that. I know
Y
I don't, and I
y
regret that, but
if buyers treated vendors like that, it'd be hilarious. Like,
well,
if I saw CISO running across the room hugging another seller, that'd be funny.
I just wish vendors would treat everybody that walks up like that. I mean, clearly the people who just want the stuffed animal, I get it, but you have to treat everybody with dignity, respect, and at some point who might be your buyer in the future,
Yeah.
and they just might be. So anyway.
Well, to sign up, just how about you, like, take me through how you like to be approached? Clearly not by personal cell phone and email and LinkedIn all at once, but
No, if you're going to approach me, frankly, if I do have needs, I do my research. And so I want you to generate the most valuable thing you think there is. If you're going to cold call me, and I actually put a post up about this while I was at Walmart. If you want to approach me, I'm easy. And the reason I say I'm easy, not because I'll reply, but because I have 8 books in print. I have articles. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You know my interests. You know what triggers me. You know what I like. And that way you can go ahead and you could put something personal together and
mhm,
just say, "Hey, I read your article about this. I read your book. This triggered me." You don't even have to read anything. You just go ahead and glance it. Like Amazon, you could read, like, a chapter or two without even saying anything or without buying the book. And when I was at Walmart, you think you want to get in? Nobody did research. And so you need to research people and treat people much like Richard Simmons. Treat them like how this person is important to me. If
Yeah.
this person's important to me, let me do my research. And if you go ahead, not to say I'm always going to give you a look, maybe I'm in a bad mood, maybe I'm just have 1,000 things with 50 other LinkedIn messages. But the best way to do it is by doing some basic research, treating me like I'm an individual and saying, lead off with something. Look, I saw you talking about this. Let me show you I'd appreciate the opportunity to show you how we solve that problem.
Yeah.
That's the best way. Or I saw your person. I don't know how to reach them. Here's this person who was saying that they're doing this. Can you please set up an introduction?
Yeah.
But it's gotta be personalized, otherwise, you're, like, treating me like I am this random deer on the Serengeti, and you are just this leopard who's gonna pounce on anything that sticks out.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely sound advice, and it's reoccurring advice on the podcast. More are listening. I know that more sales reps and marketers are listening to this advice. And we have some pretty cool stuff coming down the pike from a product perspective that will help reps and marketers do this. Would love to fill you in on that at some point.
Mhm.
But this has been an absolute pleasure. You're always welcome to the show. Any imparting thoughts you want to give to the audience today?
Um, I was once well, first off, again, I have a complete bias. Everybody, please go to cruisecon.com and take a look at that. It is gonna be an awesome event that is 100% inclusive for anybody who wants to network with top-tier people in a top-tier environment. That aside, I was once asked a similar question on a panel when I was at Walmart, and I said, "Look, just be excellent to everyone," to quote Bill and Ted. I know I'm a far cry from following my own advice sometimes, but at least try. It's hard, but when you treat people with dignity and respect, you'll get that. Maybe I won't email your CEO about, to your I completely forgot about that, but maybe I won't email your CEO, at least some disdain, but at least, it at least won't trigger me to ignore you with, what's the word? You have been, when you I forgot the legal term where you dismiss a case with
Adjourned?
prejudice,
Prejudice.
like,
Oh,
or I'm gonna dismiss you with prejudice.
got you. Got you.
Sorry.
Yeah. 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 Oh my gosh, amazing. I mean, this has been so fun, and I know we kind of, noodle on different topics, but super valuable for me. How did you find it?
Oh, I love it. Again, I don't remember anything we talked about.
Well
But it
well,
was I know I enjoyed it.
good, good. Most important, we'll be posting this, obviously in the audio channels. You're always, in the video channels, you're always welcome to the show again. This has been another episode of Audience First.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.